Hello there and welcome to a special Kentucky Derby preview edition of That Handicapping Show sponsored by TVG. I'm Jason Chandler, he's Tom LaMarra, and Derby 138 is now just a little more than a week away, believe it or not. And on this show we'll give some of our observations on the potential field and also a couple wild card horses that we'll be looking at strongly in our wagering. Tom, we'll start by talking about a couple things for me that stand out. First of all is the amount of graded earnings that it's going to take to get in this field. Right now, El Padrino is number 20 with $250,000 of graded earnings. I think that really speaks to the quality of this field. There's not many horses that are backing into this race. I think that's pretty significant. And the other thing I think you have to talk about in this Derby is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year and how strong that looks now. You have the top 5 finishers of that race coming back for the Derby, and actually 8 or 9 of the horses altogether in that field pointing to that race. So that really, form is really held from last year to this year, and I think, again, that speaks to the quality of the field.
I think you're right, and this is probably blasphemous, but as you know, this is not my favorite day of racing for a couple reasons. It's not that I don't like the Kentucky Derby, it's just long and it can be quite costly on one's wallet. However, that said, for the reasons that you just mentioned, I'm actually excited about this group of horses, and I haven't been this excited to watch this race for several years now. So I think the Breeders' Cup Juvenile had a lot to do with that because, we've seen these horses.
Right.
We got to know them last year. Like you said, 9 or 10 of them are back, which is great. I think it's a great race to watch and hopefully a great race to bet.
From a betting perspective right now, whether you like favorites or long shots, you're going to get value. I'm just going to take a quick guess here on what not morning line odds are, but what post-time odds could look like. And I'm still thinking Union Rags is going to go off as a favorite, somewhere around 9-2, 5-1. I could be off on that. I think Bodemeister might be around 6-1, Gemologist around 7-1, and then you'll have a group of horses like Creative Calls, Hanson, and Take Charge Indy around the 8-10-1 range. I don't know if you agree with that, but when all said and done, I think your favorite is going to be somewhere in the 9-2 to 5-1 range, which is
I've thought that for weeks. I figured nothing less than 9-2 or 5-1, unless something strange happens. Of course, we're planning on having this group of horses in the race as
exactly.
But I think you're right on there.
Yeah. So this show is not about giving our picks. We'll do that next week. But let's talk about a couple horses that we think are wild cards and we're really looking at closely that will either be a decent price or maybe play a big role in the field. And I know for you, one of those is Went the Day Well. Went the Day Well,
yes. When we throw these horses out a week in advance, we almost lock ourselves into having to use these horses. So please remind me to use these 2 horses that I'm going to talk about because it would be foolish not to. I've been burned before. Went the Day Well, of course, won the Spiral, hasn't raced since. Was green. They talked about running him in the Coolmore Lexington. They took a pass. It was the same thing with Animal Kingdom last year. Same connections coming out of the same race. One thing about Went the Day Well that I like is I think he's a lot more tactical than Animal Kingdom. Can he get the distance? I think he can. But of course, that's a wait and see thing. But you're looking at a horse that may be 15-20-1 with John Velasquez riding.
Yeah.
He's won on dirt. There's a lot of upside here, and Team Valor is very good at picking out horses to buy, and I think this is one of those horses.
It just kind of mirrors what happened last year. You talk to some people, this horse doesn't have the 1.25 mile pedigree maybe that Animal Kingdom
maybe
had,
not.
But anyway, at that price and the way he's coming into the race,
right.
he certainly looks like he's peaking.
I think he's coming into it right.
Yeah. One of the horses for me is going to be Daddy Knows Best. I really like him, and there's a lot of positives for me about him. He's got a lot of bottom, 10 starts and 4 wins. He's the only horse in that race who's actually won twice at 1 1/8, and I like that. And they were both in grade 3s, and a big question about him is his class. Does he fit here? Coming off 2 grade 3 wins, and that's legitimate. It's a legitimate concern. But he's overcome a lot in both of those wins, especially to El Camino. stuck on the rail, and really dueled in that race, and got a lot out of both races. You know, he's been at Churchill since the beginning of the month. He's going to have 3 works over the track, which is more than anyone's going to have. He's going to be more familiar with the track. I really like that. He's trained by Asmussen, who's the perennial leading trainer at Churchill, and is overdue for a Derby win, as is his rider, Garrett Gomez. So if you're into Karma, I just think, you know, he's a horse that at again, 15 to 20 to 1, really coming into the race the right way and being battle tested is a factor for me.
All right, I can buy that one too, so it's fine. El Padrino, interesting horse, hasn't run since the Florida Derby, training well in Florida, again for Pletcher, so you know, I would look carefully at this horse. He should get in. He's really never run a bad race. The Florida Derby, I think, was a little bit funky, quite frankly.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Union Rags next week. Obviously, he didn't win the race, but he ran big. El Padrino, really, it was just an odd trip. I'm willing to draw a line through that, and quite frankly, I think, you know, no problem with the distance. So. 3
straight races that he's run 100+ brisk speed numbers. He's, like you said, he's consistent. The knock on him is that maybe he's a grinder, plotter type, which isn't all that bad necessarily, but for me, he might be a horse rather than to win the race would you know, use on the bottom of your tickets, which is fine. But that being said, there's no reason, you know, he can't win the race. You know, he's consistent. So
it is wide open.
The other horse I'll talk about real quick is Take Charge Indy, who you know, you have to respect because he beat Union Rags, and you know, the knock on him is going to be that he had a front-running easy triple there, and you know, that he won't get that in this Derby. He certainly won't be on the front end. He's not a front running type of horse, really. He just got that kind of trip. But he's no fluke. He's a horse that was highly thought of as a juvenile. He's faced some of the best horses in this race and ran competitively in all of them. Was a solid 5th over the Churchill track in the Juvie, and with a troubled trip. So he's not one of these horses who just stepped up in the Florida Derby and it was a fluke race. And you have to consider the Calvin Borel factor. It sounds cliche and it sounds amateurish, but it's
no,
real.
When it comes to wagering or the wagering public, you're right. It will be a factor,
yeah,
for sure.
And I think he'll get a stalking trip. He'll sit 4th or 5th, and I don't know if that's the kind of trip that he likes or needs, but that's probably where he'll be placed. He has good tactical speed. So
you're saying that it would be foolish of me to use Union Rags and El Padrino, but not use the horse that beat them in the Florida Derby?
I don't know. I mean,
No, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
I haven't made up my mind on who I'm going to use, but I'm just saying he's a horse that's going to be 10, 12 to 1, and you know, I think we're both leaning towards Union Rags right now, and that horse
you're
beat
right
him.
About that right now. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll go over our picks, and you know, hopefully most of the field next week live from Churchill, and it's going to be a great Derby, like you said. And
looking forward to it.
Thanks to TVG for our sponsor, and Briss will have the Derby PPs for us next week, which we appreciate. So we look forward to seeing you from Churchill. Good luck with your wagering this weekend. Until then, I'm Jason. He's Tom. Good day and good racing.